Hey, my name is Katie Pijanowski, and I'm a certified life coach and motivational speaker, and I'm here to help you unlock your true strength so you can create the life of your dreams. I teach you my best tips to master your mindset, create confidence, and empower yourself to take back your life. It's your time. This is the Mind and Body Strong podcast. My friends, welcome back to the Mind and Body Strong podcast. Today, I have the one, the only Denise Jacobs, who is a speaker and author, and she wrote the book called Banish Your Inner Critic. This book really stuck out to me when I was at the bookstore one day, and I just had to have it. And I just devoured every single page, all of the lessons, all of the amazing activities that she includes in here, and that she teaches around the world to help corporations really engage their contributors and help to unlock creativity, which really gets blocked when we have all of these inner critic thoughts going on in our head. But the conversation that Denise and I have in this episode today is really just vital for anyone, because we talk about how this inner critic voice, it doesn't only apply to creativity, which is what she really frames the book Banish Your Inner Critic about, but it also applies to every single area of your life. Your relationships, your career, your health, every single thing. We are having conversations in our head, and if we work to shift those conversations to a place where we can allow more love and appreciation and gratitude, that is where things can really, really change for us. I can't wait for you guys to hear from Denise. She is fantastic, gives us so many amazing takeaways. You're gonna wanna get a notebook and write this down. I can't wait to introduce you to Denise.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mind and Body Strong podcast. I have a fantastic guest with me here today. Her name is Denise Jacobs. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to have you. So Denise, actually, I read her book. So for my audience out there, she has written a book called Banish Your Inner Critic. And I saw it at the bookstore, said, I have to have this. And what I loved about how you wrote it is two things. I love that the chapters have actual thoughts that people used at your speeches that you did. Yeah. So you did like an activity.
Yeah. So I do this activity. I call it the indoor snowball fight. And when I say I call it, I mean the person that gave me this, shared this activity with me, said it's called indoor snowball fight. And I was like, great. So not to take credit, I did not think of it. It's a well-used kind of interactivity tool for facilitations and whatnot. But what I did was I would have people think about their top fear around creativity, and then I would have them write it down on a piece of paper, crumble up the piece of paper into a ball, and then on the count of 3, throw the ball as far as they can across the room, right? And so it's phenomenal to see this in an auditorium with 2,000 people and balls flying everywhere and everything, and just how much fun people have with it. But what I started doing is I started, kind of after about maybe the first or second one, I was like, this is really good data, right? This is really good information. And so I started collecting. I actually spoke at Adobe Max back in 2015. And it was one of the first times I had done the exercise. And then, after the high of giving the talk and how well received it was and everything, I'm left there in the room with all of these pieces of paper on the floor. And I was just like, I'm curious. And so I started reading them and I was like, wait a minute. And then I just started gathering them up. And then after a while, I'd be like, hey, leave the papers for me because I use them as research because this is like phenomenal data. So I got them home, and then I started to categorize them. Like all of the times that somebody said, I'm not good enough, I don't feel like I'm smart enough, I don't know enough, not talented enough, and not skilled enough. Anytime there wasn't enough, I was like, okay, these are similar. Anytime it was like, people are going to find me out as a fraud, I kept those. Any ones that said, I'm not as smart as other people, or I'm not as talented as other, or I work with such a talented group of teammates. How do I measure up? I was like, okay, that's all about comparison. So I started to categorize them, and I realized that there were these groupings of thinking that you're not enough, of judging yourself, of being really highly self-critical, of feeling like I can't do it unless it's perfect, or if it's not perfect, then it's going to be, like all sorts of things, or I can't ever get started, or, all of these different things that people said. And so when I wrote the book, I was like, I'm not just making this stuff up, right? Like, this is not me writing a book because I think this is a good idea. Like, I'm literally writing this book based on what people have told me, like what people have shared, what they revealed. It's all anonymous, mm-hmm. right? But it's all very real. This is literally what is in somebody's head, mm-hmm. right? These are their actual thoughts. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, and that's one of the reasons why I was really happy to be on your podcast, is that creativity was just the context that I used for all of this information in the book. But this Banish Your Inner Critic, it isn't just about creativity. It can be about anything, right? It can be about body transformation. It can be mm-hmm. about relationships. It can be about your career. It can be about it can be about so many things, right?
Absolutely.
And by the way, Katie, I don't know if you think you know this about me, but I used to be about 100 pounds heavier than I am now.
Oh, really?
And I did like a really kind of, over the course of 5 years, did like quite a big body transformation endeavor. And I never like calling it weight loss, because
right.
when you lose something, you go and look for it again.
Sure.
And so like, I also really do understand what the inner critic in relationship to body size and body transform, and mm-hmm. all the kinds of body identity and all of that stuff. Yeah. So not just around creativity. And with this exercise, one of the things that I think is so powerful about it is that you can contextualize it any way you want. So I've spoken at leadership conferences and done this exercise and said, what is your top fear about being a leader? Mm. I've done it at conferences where I was talking about collaboration, and I was like, what's your top fear about collaborating with people? Mm-hmm. And so you can contextualize it any way you want, but you will get that core, very essence of what people's fears are, and the nice thing is, like I said, it's anonymous. So
yeah, I love that activity. It was like, and how it was set up to, these are actual thoughts that people are having in their brain, and in the context of creativity in the book. But you're so right. It's in anything that we do in life. We see these different thoughts that are coming up in our brains. And I think a lot of times we're just not even aware that we're operating from that system. So I loved that in your book, you really give a lot of tangible tools to help people break through that inner critic, to unlock their creativity, or unlock, their body transformation, or whatever it might be. It's really like what I see in my work too, is just like the roadblock that stops people from living their best lives.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Totally.
So I would love to hear, just like, for those people who are having like those inner critic thoughts that are just so like just paralyzing, mm-hmm. what are some of your best tools to help people gain awareness and kind of take back their brains from this inner critic?
Right. And take their power back. So one of the things, and like kind of what you were saying earlier, is it's really about the awareness, right? It's really about the awareness and being able to identify that voice, because what happens is, so many times people that voice is so dominant and so prevalent in their brains that they don't realize that it's the voice of their inner critic, and not the voice of actually they're kind of their true selves, or like their true souls. You know what I mean? Like your true self and your true soul is not critical, and not like your true self is powerful and knowing and, you know, wise and pays attention and all this stuff. And then you've got that scared part of yourself. It's like, if you do this, horrible things are going to happen. Don't, no, you know.
Right.
And so one of the exercises I have in the book is an exercise where I call it inner critic mad libs. And
I love that one.
Identify your inner critic through completing these sentences. So saying things like, if I blank, then I'll blank. So, you know, if I try to do anything, I'm going to fail. Or if I can't blank because then I'll blank, or because then people will blank, right? I can't try something because then people will laugh at me or they will judge me, that sort of thing. And so I have actually kind of a list of 10 of these different mad libs that you can do that help you get in touch with those kind of limiting thoughts and those limiting beliefs that really are that originate from the inner critic. And then basically the whole rest of the book that's at the beginning, right at the beginning, right? Then the whole rest of the book is all of these kind of different ways to start dismantling those voices and to start dealing with those thoughts. One of my favorite exercises, and I don't know if you saw this, actually, this is something where you'd actually have to have seen me talk in person, because I don't think I put it in the book. I don't remember, actually. But I have an exercise that I do where what I do is I have people put up both hands in front of their face and to focus on one hand, to like put all of your focus on one hand and look at the shape of your hand, look at the shape of your fingers, the lines on your hands, just really, really focus on that hand. It's actually interesting. My hand is getting warm because of all of the focus.
Yeah, I'm doing this as you're talking, trying it out, and I can,
So then imagine that this hand that you're focused on, this first hand, is holding all of those negative thoughts, all of those inner critical thoughts. I can't start something, and I can't exercise because it's too hard and I'm not athletic. I can't do this, I can't do that. And then slowly start to shift your attention from your first hand to your second hand. And put all your focus and your attention on that hand, and look at the shape of your fingers, look at the lines on your palm, etc. And then think that this hand is holding all of the positive things that you want to say. Like, you know what, I'm going to start and I'm going to do the best that I can, and we'll just see. You know, like, I deserve to take good care of myself. Like, I can be creative, whatever it is that you want to be thinking. Now, this is a good question for you, Katie. Is your first hand still there?
Yes.
Do you care about your first hand now that you're so focused on your second hand?
No, I forgot about it.
You forgot about it! Exactly. And that is exactly that we have. This is actually a practice of mindfulness combined with focus and attention, right? And so our brains are actually a function, our thoughts and how our brains work is a function of what we pay attention to and what we focus on.
Oh, so good.
Right? And so when you actually do this exercise, you're physically forcing, or you're physically able to see and viscerally see and feel what it's like to take your attention and to take it from one place and to put it on another place.
Yeah, I love that example.
Right? And then you can actually feel the difference of, like, you're like, wait, I don't care about what's in that other hand, right?
Right.
I'm so focused on this. And we have that same power to be able to do that with our thoughts. And if you have it, find yourself getting into that kind of rumination cycle where you're cycling on these negative thoughts over and over again, I just tell people, just put your hands up, and then put all your focus and then just shift so you can actually feel the difference. And then you can be like, oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. I can do this anytime. I can do this. Just like the same way, if you do yoga or meditation or anything, it's like your breath is always there. You can always focus on your breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
You always have that capacity to take that, to get back in control, to get back into the present, to like become more mindful. And you always have that power to shift your attention from one thought to another.
I love that so much because I am very visual myself. So I could feel the shift when I had my hands up in the air, and especially the last piece there too. And for those of you listening in on the podcast, if you weren't doing this along with us, please rewind and do it with us, because it's really powerful to see how when you shift your focus, those negative thoughts might still be there, but you've just chosen to put your focus on the good stuff. And I see that happen so often with people I speak with, just reporting all of the negative things like they're the news, and like, this is just how it is. There's no other way. But when you really shift their focus to start to point out the things that are going well, even if it's the smallest things, like it's those types of shifts that can help us go in the right direction. And I think that's such a good awareness exercise to be like, oh yeah, I do have a choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times we feel like we don't.
We feel like we don't, but it's like, and again, the more you make choices like that, the more you make a choice to choose a positive thought over a negative thought, what you're actually doing is you're starting to rewire your brain. You're actually practicing neuroplasticity, and you're actually training your brain to lay down different neural tracks and to create stronger connections with the positive thinking, mm-hmm. and weaker connections with the negative thinking.
Yeah, which is so powerful. And our brains are just such an incredible organ in our body. Like it's, and mm-hmm. our minds and bodies are so connected. Like they cannot exist one without the other, which is why I love the whole idea of the mind and body connection, and really understanding how your mind processes can help you, understand how to connect that a little bit better. And that's why, like, yoga, meditation you had mentioned, and even just these simple things of shifting the focus from one hand to another can help you have more of that awareness to like what's actually going on. Awareness is such a big thing. Like I remember when I was first kind of going into my journey, and that one of my counselors was like, oh, just be aware of what's going on. And I was like, what are you talking about? Tell me what to do. I need the step-by-step. I'm like very like, like that. And when you're introduced to mindfulness for the first time, it's like, what is this? I don't understand. Mm-hmm. For someone who's very like, what do I do? And it's like, well, maybe you just do nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It'd be so frustrating. Mm-hmm. But another thing you talk a lot about in the book is like imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all of those types of things. And I think that, again, it comes up in every single area of life, and it can really paralyze us from doing the things that we love. So I'm curious, when you were writing this book, did you have any of that come up for you?
Oh my God, all the time. And the funny thing is that this whole journey, actually, for me, and to actually even to get to the point of writing this book, it all started when I wrote my first book, which was called the CSS Detective Guide, because I used to be a web designer, a web developer. And what ended up happening was, during the process of writing that book, I was faced with this inner critic and feeling like an imposter and trying to do it perfectly, and like, I was doing all of it, fear of being judged, and comparing myself to other people, and just super highly self-critical, all of this stuff that I was doing like every day for like 9 months, or like 10 months. It was a lot, right? Like every day. And then finally, at one point I was just like, I just have to, like, how do you get over self-doubt? Like, what do you do to get over self-doubt? And that's when I discovered this article that, interestingly enough, had a phrase in it that said, banish your inner critic to go search for rare lemurs in Madagascar. And I was like, banish your inner critic. I just really like the way that sounds. And so like it just kind of like went and like, you know, like went in the back of my mind and stuff. But I still, you know, I started like paying more attention of like, okay, this thing is coming up. I need some kind of way to deal with it. And so I started coming up with like these kind of different tactics, like how I would be like, all right, I'm going to write a really bad paragraph. Like, I just need to write. I'm not going to worry about whether it's good or not, whether it's, you know, Nobel Prize, you know, writing award worthy or anything. I'm just going to write a really bad sentence. Then I'm going to write a really bad paragraph. Then I'm going to write like, then this chapter is going to be awful. And it doesn't matter because I just need to write it. And then I would do things like I would take comedy breaks and I would watch comedy so that I would laugh, so that it would help me relax and then I could think better. And I would get up and I would take dance breaks, and I would get up and I would, you know, like there's just like all these kind of things that I would do that I realized were actually creativity enhancing techniques, but that were also, because they also enhanced creativity because they distracted the inner critic. And so then that kind of got me on this whole path of looking into, you know, delving into understanding how creativity works and the creative process, and everything kept coming back to, well, if you're feeling like an imposter, you're not going to be able to be creative. Well, if you're afraid of being judged, you're not going to be able to be creative. Well, if you're like a perfectionist, you're trying to do, I was like, so basically what you're saying is you can't be creative until your inner critic is silent. Great. And so that's what kind of got me on this thing. So when I was writing this book, the irony is that I was so immersed in information about the inner critic that it was like, instead of it like being like, oh, I've got all these techniques, and I was struggling with stuff, and I knew that I was struggling with stuff, but it was almost more intense because I was so in the mode of thinking about the inner critic and thinking about all of the different nuances and ramifications and you know, like all of the different things in my past that it connected with, and then it was like, here I am, an expert, you know, quote unquote, on the inner critic, experiencing the inner critic, like, what's happening? So it was very meta in a lot of ways. But and then the funny thing is that I ended up having kind of such bad inner critic that basically I actually had writer's block, or it felt like writer's block. And I hired a writing coach to help me. And that's because she had written a book called Around the Writer's Block. And her whole approach was how to kind of use neuroscience to overcome writer's block. And I was just like, I'm sorry, are we like sisters from another mister? Like, what just happened here? Because I was like, I read the whole book and I was like, this is amazing. And this is basically all the stuff I'm writing about, but with like a kind of different take on things. I was like, but I could try to work through all of this myself. I was like, but I really just want somebody to work with. So I called her, or like sent her an email, and I said, look, this is what's happening. I'm experiencing all this writer's block. I've got like 5 weeks left to finish this book, and I have like another like 7 chapters that I'm trying to write and all this stuff. And she was like, okay. So I ended up working with her, and it was really, really, really helpful. But so yeah, I totally had inner critical stuff while I was working with the book, and then afterwards. And then the interesting thing is that in terms of my own inner critic around writing Banish Your Inner Critic, very meta, how that kind of stopped, or not stopped, but like over time it became less and less and less. I think because now it feels like, even though it's been 3 years since the book came out, it feels like it's finally, like people are like, I think I just was early Like, I think it was just kind of early for the market. It wasn't the right time necessarily. And also, it could have been a marketing issue, but I think now it's starting to just get into people's hands, like yours. Like, I saw it in the bookstore. I had to buy it right at that moment, and I devoured it. And I feel like now it's just like, it's like the right time, and it's getting people, and it's really resonating. And I'm just like, I was just ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And I think it's so relatable that while writing a book like this, like experiencing that imposter syndrome, experiencing all of those thoughts, I think it's a super unrealistic expectation to think that they're like just never going to be there ever again.
Right.
And the perfectionism piece of it, like it has to be done perfect. I loved the expectation you had set in the beginning when you started talking about just write a bad sentence and then write a bad paragraph. Like, okay, I could do that because it takes the pressure off. And now you're just creating, which is so great, because when we get ourselves in that corner and we need to have it exactly right. I experience this all the time with stuff I'm creating. And it's just like, I get myself in the corner, and it's just, if you can just flip it around and just say, just do something really bad, and then write it down, make it, imperfect, and then just let it be, can be so, so powerful. Oh, I was just going to say, I love that you were like bringing up the creative breaks that you would do to kind of refill your cup, as I would kind of say that as like self-care and like really taking good care of yourself to bump up that creativity. And I think that is so important. And I do that a lot myself, being that I'm someone who tries, like I get in that habit of like working too much. And then my creativity, or like, my motivation just is like,
right.
So taking those creative breaks is like so important. But I know you mentioned comedy being one that you really loved. Is there other like self-care, like activities / creative activities that you love to do to kind of get yourself back in that place?
Well, one of the things I do a lot, and the funny thing is like, we talk a lot of times when people envision self-care, they envision, being on a chase lounge, on a beach, underneath a palm tree with like a drink in your hand, like that's restorative, that's revitalizing, that's rest. And it can be, I'm not arguing with that. That can be rest. And I think for some people, rest can also be, and I will say this for myself, that rest can mean doing something different than the thing that's the stressor, right? So doing something, still being active, but having that activity be something that is a restorative activity. So for me, I do quite a bit of gardening, and honestly, it's kind of almost more like landscaping, I would call it. I'm starting to like, because I always feel like, again, with gardening, the image that you get in your head, like I always get this image of like a lady in a garden with a hat and a basket over her arm and little gloves and clippers where she's clipping roses and laying them in the basket, and that is for gardening, and I'm like, no, when I'm like, I was gardening, what I'm doing is serious yard work, and I'm hauling huge, like wheelbarrows full of mulch and compost, and I'm digging, holes and planting trees, and like, I'm repotting like 20 plants at a time. I do not have a basket over my arm and gloves and a floppy hat. Like I am sweating. It's hot in Florida. It's hot and it's sunny. And I'll go out for 2 hours and my whole shirt will be like completely drenched in sweat. This is work, y'all. This is work. But it's not work. Right? Like when I garden or when I'm outside in the yard and I'm doing this stuff, like it's one of the times, one of the few times that my brain slows down and focuses. And it's like, all I'm thinking about is what the next thing. Okay, I'm doing this pot. Okay, then I'm going to plant the next pot. Okay, just want to make sure that I get enough dirt in there. And I talk to the plants, and I'm like, you're going to be fine. And this is going to be great. And this is so exciting. And, blah, blah, blah. And then I get that pot, and then I would do another one. Oh, do I need more dirt? I need to mix up more dirt. I put this in, I put this. And it's very like very step by step, very like sequential, very linear, very like kind of predictable, and there's some problem solving in it, but it's very, so that's what I do in a lot of ways to restore myself, is that I give myself permission, or I do basically kind of creative projects where I'm thinking, but I'm thinking in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. And it really allows you to focus in, like you had said, like doing one thing at a time. We get so overwhelmed by just putting everything and all the things on our plate and thinking we need to have, like the next 5 years planned out today, and just taking that time to do something where you can just break it down into little steps and give your inner critic something else to think about for a little while instead of beating the crap out of you.
Right. And as a business owner, and then you would like know this too, that as a business owner and like somebody who's working to have a social media presence and, visibility and reach and this and that and the other thing and clients and la, 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 la. It's like, there is so much to think about. There is so much to think about strategically, practically, financially, like customer service wise, like, did I respond to that? Does it take I need to, and then I need to get new business and this and this and this, and so much to think about. Everything needs to happen, it seems like, at once. And it can be so overwhelming. Right. And so when it's just like, I just need to put some plants in a pot, it's like super straightforward, and then give them some water afterwards, like easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Like, right. So, something like that, where it's just like, I know exactly, I know pretty much the pieces of all of this puzzle. I don't know all the strategy for business stuff. I don't know all the social media. I don't know all the marketing strategy. I don't know all the, I don't know my ideal, client target audience avatar, to like, I don't know all of that stuff, but like, I can put a pomegranate seedling in a pot and make sure it stays alive. I can totally do that.
Yeah, just giving yourself those little things. And you'd brought it up with gardening, and I'm kind of thinking about how I'd apply that to even tackling my emails in my inbox. I'm like, okay, I can do this one request, and then I do it, and then I'm like, okay, I can do this next request, no big deal. And I feel like when I slow myself down, instead of just looking at the hundreds of emails that sometimes are in my inbox and thinking they all need to be done right now, I actually end up getting things done faster than if I just think I need to do it all and I'm all over the place and just trying to do all the things. So to wrap up, Denise, I would love to hear what some of your biggest takeaways and lessons are from writing this book, from experiencing it. What are some of your biggest lessons and takeaways from all of that you'd like to share?
So, kind of one of the things that I was saying earlier, this is one of the kind of my biggest lessons I feel like right now, or one of my biggest realizations right now, is that, and I think this is applicable to not just the book, but I mean, I think with everything with our careers and work and stuff like that, is that things are they're a slow build. And that, at least for me, like I was saying, I'm just now starting to feel like the book and my work around the inner critic and everything is getting the reception that I was hoping for, and getting the recognition that I was hoping for, and that people are starting to think like, oh, saying, oh, this inner critic stuff that you do would be so perfect for my clients, or would be so perfect for my podcast, or would be so perfect. Whereas before it was like, I felt like I was saying that and people were like, oh, that's nice, dear. Oh, inner critic stuff. I mean, how would that be like relevant for a keynote? I'm like, are you are you kidding? Or, you know, and now people are like, oh, it's so important and everybody's got it. And we just want you to come and talk to, and I'm like, okay, this is really, so I feel like it's kind of this exercise in self-trust, of trusting yourself and trusting your ideas and trusting that, and this is, you know, I talk about this a lot in the book, like trusting that what you have to offer, what you come up with, and kind of your own unique take on whatever it is valuable, and that it will be recognized, right? And it may not be an immediate thing. It may not come at the time that you thought it was going to. I mean, I was, you know, hoping for this like big like reception. Oh my God, the book came out, it's amazing, and all these people like reviewing it and stuff. And, you know, that's not exactly what happened. But now it's like I'm not as attached, and then when people say good things, I'm like, that's wonderful, and this is exactly why I wrote the book. You know, I wrote the book for you. You know, I for you, Katie, in the bookstore looking in the skirt. Yes, please.
Yes.
You know, I wrote the book for like all of the people who were just like, I feel like the book was written for me. And I was like, because it was. I wrote it because I know what the struggles are. I understand. And like I said, it's not just about creativity. It's about so much more. And so yeah, so I mean, I think it's the idea that things are a long game, and to trust yourself and to trust your work, and also then to keep paying attention to what people are saying, what's going on around you, so that when the next thing that you work on is just as relevant, right? And just as resonant and just as impactful, or maybe even more.
I love all of that. And I have so many highlighted stuff in your book. It's at home. It's like all highlighted. So I'm definitely going to make sure to put that in the description. All of you guys need to check it out. It's awesome. It has a lot of really tangible tools, like I mentioned earlier, and many of the ones that she shared on the podcast. So where else can people come hang out with you? Where do you hang out online?
Okay, so definitely come to my website, denisejacobs.com, and really importantly, sign up for my newsletter at denisejacobs.com/subscribe, because I have been dropping mad science in my newsletter as of late. Please come and connect with me on LinkedIn. Also, I'm on Twitter with Denise Jacobs. I'm on Instagram at Denise Jacobs. On Facebook, you can go to facebook.com/denisejacobs.com, all written out. LinkedIn is Denise R. Jacobs, and I do have a YouTube channel, but you know, it's in progress. So at some point in time, but those ones for sure. But definitely, especially. Oh, and then please go to Amazon.
Yes.
And buy
the book.
Banish Your Inner Critic
and review it, because it's going to be amazing.
Yes, and please do leave a review, because I only have 10 more reviews that I need before it starts getting recommended. So
perfect.
We get to 55 reviews. My goal actually is to get to 100.
Awesome.
So we need like 55, 5 more reviews or 10 more reviews to get to 55, and then however many more to get to 100, almost just a little bit over 50. And then more people will hear about the book, and it'll be able to help more folks.
Awesome. Well, it definitely needs to be in more hands, because I know that this is something that every human being struggles with. So the more people we can spread this message to, the better. So thank you so much for your work and for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I was so touched when you reached out. You were like, I read the book, it's amazing.
Yes.
Like, of course.
So glad that we got to chat.
Me too.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Mind and Body Strong podcast. You are what makes this movement and message possible. If you loved this episode, share it with a friend, a coworker, a family member, or take a screenshot and share it on your favorite social media platform and tag Mind and Body Strong. To learn more about coaching and courses to help you take your journey to the next level, visit mindandbodystrong.com.